warm welcome to the screening of Any Other Business. I'm Kieran Trahan, Pro Vice-Chancellor for Partnerships and Engagement, and we'll be chairing the event today. But before we start, let me just run through a few technical notes with you all. If you're watching live, you can ask questions using the Q&A button on your screen. This will be available throughout the event, so questions can be asked at any time. Should you have any technical issues, such as loss of Wi-Fi, you can rejoin the event using the original link. Please do remember, though, that today's event is being recorded, so you will be able to watch it again. Subtitles are also available during the event. These will appear automatically during the screening of the film, but you are able to turn them off or on during the conversation that follows. Please use the CC Live Transcript button, which is at the bottom of your screens, to manage this. Today's event will begin with a special screening of Any Other Business, a film by Adam Robinson. It explores how we find space to talk about what's really important at the work. The film is inspired by the findings from a major ESRC-funded research project into LGBT and employee networks in the NHS, led by Anna at the University of York. The screening will be followed by a question and answer panel discussion with the scriptwriter Adam Robinson, the play's director Chloe Christian, and Anna from the University of York. If you would like to ask any questions, please use the buttons on your screen. So without further ado, let's watch a really important and critical screening. Thank you.
It happened during my first month at the Greenwell Trust. We were in the staff canteen as a change of scenery from the office. We was me and Jan, my boss's boss, and we were looking over a press release I'd written for my first job. Big donors, big deal. It's fine, Jan had said. Actually, it's quite good. You should have seen the state of my first few press releases. Then she threw her hand up in a wave. Oh, Carol! Hello, love. How's it going? All right? Yeah. Oh, love to your mum. She's a love, is Carol. She's a lesbian. Behind Jan was a big poster and a rainbow banner that said, "This is an inclusive workplace." Beside it, a notice. Voice. Greenwell Trust's LGBT+ network. Got something to say? Join us. Use your voice. Carol works in paediatrics. Think you and your husband will have kids? I don't know, I said. Probably not. She's standing by the door, clinging to a flyer. Oh, hello, says Stuart, breaking the deadlock. He's the chair, after all. Are you with us? Yes. Hello, my name is Vanya. I'm from El Salvador. I'm bisexual and I'm new, so... Hello. Oh, we don't always introduce ourselves like... That's not how we... Come in. Vanya moves silently into the room. This is the first new person we've seen at a meeting in a while. Oh, welcome, Vanya, says Dev. Don't worry, most of us don't bite. Yes, welcome, Vanya. Alma, as per, says nothing and just sighs. Vanya takes a chair from the pile and joins us. Right, well, welcome, Vanya. Just to catch you up, we've just been talking about relaunching the network. Didn't we say relaunching was a bit strong? Right, Dev. And we were thinking about what this word inclusion means. Well, just making everyone welcome. Namely, do we want separate meetings for LGBTQI plus people and LGBTQI plus people along with straight allies? Sure, says Carla. I mean, we love allies, of course we do, but in my last trust, I swear I attended meetings and it was me, the chair, and 6 allies. Vanya looks from one person to the next. I think we could get bogged down in this, couldn't we? He says. I've made a note. Shall we press on? Right. Next is increasing membership numbers. I mean, thank goodness for Vanya. Actually, Vanya, how did you hear about us? Was it an email or... Oh, I was told... She hands Stuart a flyer. Oh, I think you're in the wrong meeting. You want the LGBTQI plus positive mental health group. You've ended up with us by mistake. Oh, you poor soul. She picks up her bag, smiles apologetically, and walks to the door. Oh, but you can still sit with us, if you like. But she's already gone, like she was never there. Stuart shrugs it off. Alma sighs. Nobody moves. I stare at the closed door. Okay, well, anyway, where were we? Yes, any other business? Does anyone have anything for us? No? Okay, well, I do. As you all know, I'm going on adoption leave on Monday, and our very own Natasha will be taking over as chair. Shall we give a round of applause for Natasha, everyone? They clap. Stuart pats his leg, and I swear Alma claps a single time. So, I'll hand over to Tash. Is there anything you'd like to say? No, not really. Just thank you. I look again at the closed door. Okay, great. Well, in that case, actually, Stuart, there is one thing. I still think there's a real issue in the workplace, our workplace, around LGBTQI plus visibility. And I read only this morning that over half of LGBT plus people are suffering from or have suffered from. Oh, Tash, he says, I'm so sorry. Looks like the other group have arrived. Perhaps you can pick it up here next time? Everyone gets to their feet. Outside the room, Stuart gives me the handover spiel. One more thing, it's a biggie. I didn't mention it before because it's only just been confirmed, but the LGBT National Staff Conference is coming up, and, well, they've asked us to host. Oh, that's good. Dev and Carla will take the bulk of the event management, but we'd like you to do an opening address, a sort of keynote speech. Speech? I squeak. Oh, we could always get Dev to do it if you'd rather not. I can hear Claire's voice in my head. This is why you signed up for the network in the first place. This is why you joined. Go for it. I'd love to do a speech, I say. I'm looking forward to it. Tash, you're going to do a great job. My tip, focus on getting the numbers up and the message out. And if in doubt, stick to the agenda. Good luck. As I'm about to leave, I see Vanya, waiting to go into the correct meeting this time. Oh, it's Vanya, isn't it? I say. I'm Tash, from the meeting earlier. I just wanted to invite you to our next meeting. You're welcome. I mean, you should come. She looks at me, ghost of a smile. I'll try, she says. The more the merrier. But she's already inside the room. Is Claire here? Is the first thing my dad says to me. Who's Claire? Says Gwen, his care assistant. He's been asking for her. Dad remembers my name 2 out of 5 times a visit. Claire's comes up 5 for 5. She's my wife, I say. What exactly happened? Oh, I'm afraid Thomas has been aggressive towards another carer. Haven't you, Thomas? He's becoming a man I tried to forget. Becoming him again, I should say. My relationship with my dad has been quite the bell curve. I knew I was gay when I was 10. Properly knew, I mean. I lost my mum when I was 4, and my dad was in his late 40s then. I didn't really come out to him. He just sort of got the gist when I started bringing girlfriends home. I spent my childhood hearing him and his mates use horrible words to describe any gay man they encountered. Any man with the slightest effeminacy was Elton John, or Kenneth Williams, or Boy George. Gay women they ignored completely. They didn't exist. I didn't exist. Or at least I learned I didn't. Home was hard. And school was... But then I went to college. Found a community. And then there was uni, and I had more and more time to be me, to figure out who I was. Between the ages of about 16 and 21, rarely did a month go by that I wasn't at some protest or rally or march. I met Claire at the Goodbye Section 28 party in London. It was as if each protest, each march, each rally was somehow a step forward. Now it often feels like... Right, when my dad was younger, he used to teach me how to swim. And he'd do this thing where he'd say, "Swim to me." And I would. And he'd keep moving, further and further back. Always moving the finish line. When he met Claire, when I finally brought her home, things changed with Dad. Because I think he got it. He finally saw love and he got it. I've got a photo of him just beaming at our wedding day, one arm around each of us. And he did this speech. He even came to Pride with us a couple of times. Rainbow face paint the lot. And then he got ill. Started forgetting. I wish I'd made a copy of that speech. The other day, I was helping him out of his bed with one of his new care assistants, Gavin. And he asked us if we were a couple. Gavin blushed. No, Dad. I'm married to Claire. Remember? Claire? Aye, Claire, he said. And is this your boyfriend? No, Dad. I'm gay, I said. and he looked shocked. And he said, "Dad? Who's your dad? I ain't your dad." And he laughed. So, I guess I did finally come out to him. And I don't suppose it'll be for the last time. He looks at me now, with the speed of a rabbit leaving the traps. And you can tell he believes he's never seen me before in his life. And then suddenly, something clicks. "Oh, it's you again," he says. "Aye, me again," I say. "And who am I?" "Oh, you're, you're, um, you're, I'm, and I guess I'll have to settle for that today. "Made in China," he says. "Good material. Feel that?" I wanted to spend my first network meeting as chair talking about belonging, how this network fits into our work, our lives, and why we feel it's important. "And it's got safety features," says Daryl. Daryl works in comms. He's an ally, and he's a nice guy. Snaps into two, like so. But right now, he's eating into my meeting time by Steve Jobsing the health and safety aspects of a lanyard. Last batch, a few people complained about the fabric, bit itchy, so we got these new ones. Comfy, Tash. I look around the room. The regulars, Daryl, and one new person, Katie from HR. She sits shyly and silently. "Great! Thanks, Daryl. Are you staying with us for the rest of the meeting, or do you need to..." It's sad, actually. I've got a mountain of admin to do," he says. "Oh, well, next time, eh?" Should give a round of applause for Daryl, everyone. Just as he's about to leave, Carla says, Quick thing, Daryl. Do you know when the new batch will come in? Only I've got loads of people from my department who missed out on the last lot." The lanyards have been popular. I've heard loads of people talking about how cool and funky they are. Seen loads of people wearing them. Even heard of people pinching them from each other's departments. "It's a good question, Carla," Daryl says. "And one with many answers. Could you just give us one, Daryl?" Alma sits looking at me and frowns. Luckily, Daryl doesn't seem to have taken any offence. "Well, all being well, and if I get the numbers in on time, around the 23rd? "Oh, could I give you my numbers now?" says Carla. "Oh yeah, me too actually," says Dev. And Daryl steps back into the room. What I planned for my first meeting was very different to this. After order numbers, we talk about logistics. After that, practicalities. When will the lanyards be handed out? At what point? To whom? Will we have enough for the national event? If we don't, can we order more? And who will fund that? Because this is important. These lanyards are important. These lanyards say, "You are welcome here." If you feel unsafe and you need someone to talk to, you can talk to me. I know this stuff needs to be sorted, but I've got the story of the original rainbow flag in here. A story of Gilbert Baker and how he taught himself to sew. Harvey Milk, the Stonewall riots, colours taken away and added again. Hot pink and sex, and red and life, and orange and healing, and yellow and sunshine, like mile-long flags, green and nature, turquoise and art, indigo and serenity, and violet, Brittany Macmillan, Spirit Day, and the 30 volunteers who used their hands to dye and stitch the first 2 flags at that parade in 1978. And I wanted to ask people what it meant to them to wear a rainbow flag today. And what about those who don't? Or who won't? What about those who aren't allowed? What does that mean? If, after we've handed out 8,000 lanyards across the trust and someone, somewhere, puts a check in a box, does that mean progress? Maybe it does. And maybe it is progress. Or maybe progress is what comes next. And as I'm sat here, thinking all these things I want other people to be thinking, I realise everyone's looking at me and waiting for me to speak. Okay, next up is recruitment numbers. I wondered about a buddy system. Everyone brings a friend. Dev? Yeah? Katie? Oh, well, actually, I'm not out yet, she says. This is actually the first LGBT thing I've been to, so... Oh, I say. Oh, that's amazing, says Dev. Yeah. Well, in that case, we'll recruit you as a recruiter next time. She smiles and doesn't say yes. My next few meetings went more smoothly than my first. Item 4. There's a course coming up on pronouns. Who'd like to sign up? I took Stuart's advice and stuck rigidly to the agenda. Oh, and I've got the handouts here with the results of the Workplace Equality Index. The train stayed on the tracks. I felt firmly in control. Next up is Cycle of Business and then Carla on the reverse mentoring programme. In my third meeting as chair, Edie asked if she could raise a question. Oh, absolutely, I'd said. Why don't you remind me in any other business and then we'll kick it around then, yeah? When we finally got to AOB, she told us. She was standing in the corridor, just off reception. The woman was in pieces. Said she'd sent her son to go and get some coffees from Starbucks. She'd seen Edie's lanyard. Her son's about to turn 16. He's transitioning from female to male. They were there for a routine outpatients procedure. And just as they were about to leave, the medic said to the mother, words to the effect of, "Your daughter has a very bright future ahead of her. She's intelligent and she's attractive, and she should simply focus on getting on with her life as a young woman." Edie has had some time to process this, but still it brings tears to her eyes. "I know that medic," she says. "I like him. I thought at first, maybe it's generational, you know? I mean, when he trained, the WHO still considered transgenderism as a mental illness. But then I thought, so what if it is generational? Where's the empathy, you know? I'm sick of the pig-headedness, the belligerence. It makes me rage, Tash, and I'm tired of that too. Part of me thought, I wished I hadn't bumped into her. Is that awful? We're having great conversations in here, but out there, it can still go very, very wrong. I know we know it, but I just think it's important, you know, to remind ourselves, I say, of why we're still here. She nods. Something shifts. And then the door flew open. "Knock, knock, knock," said a man I didn't recognise. "Hi, sorry, it's just we've got the room here at 20 past and it's a bit tight as it is." "Yeah," I say, "we'll be out at 20 past on the dot." "Oh, you're not using that clock, are you? It's 5 minutes slow, that clock." All conversation stopped. All eyes on me. "Okay, well, we'll pick it up here next time." They've changed Dad's medication. "He's had quite a lot to say for himself, actually," said Gwen. "In fact, we have been a bit concerned about his language choices. You know Gavin, the other care assistant. Well, I won't repeat it, but I've made some notes. We're not telling you to alarm you or anything, just to let you know about his progress." Progress. I remember these words. I remember them growing up. I remember one Christmas. Dad was watching the TV. Graham Norton was the host. And he muttered something. He'd had a few drinks, so had I. "Why'd you say things like that?" "Like what?" he said. "You know it upsets me." "Aye, well, perhaps it shouldn't. How could it not?" "It's not about you. It's not aimed at your dad. Can you not?" "Aye. Not in my own house, I can't. It's a free country, did you know that? You can't say nothing anymore." "And what is it exactly you want to say, Dad?" "I've heard other people use that word. I've heard them say it about each other. I don't know why people are so soft. They can call me whatever they like, I don't mind. Anyway, I don't say it in public. Yeah, and why do you think that is, Dad? Look, I'm just trying to educate you a bit on this. And he looked at me. Oh, educate me. You think because you've gone to university, your opinions are more important? You're not trying to educate me. You're trying to fix me. Well, I ain't broken. And even if I was, I'm not for you to fix. And in that moment, I can't say anything or else I'll scream it. The following year, I met Claire. What's that? He said, spotting the lanyard around my neck. Oh, do you like it? I say. Aye, it's real as that. I take it off and put it round his neck. It's for... Dad, do you remember coming to Pride with us? Oh, it's a bloody rainbow, he says. Aye, it's real as that. And he traces the rainbow with his fingers, laughing like a kid. And then suddenly, he's back there. He's looking at the telly and he's 20 years ago. And he's a bloody another one, isn't he? Disgusting. Another what? I say. And something in his expression tells me he knows he said something wrong. Something that will upset me in particular, but he doesn't know me. He doesn't know himself. Puff, he says. That's what he says. Puff. To describe a presenter of a countryside programme I don't even recognise. As I'm about to leave, Gwen comes by. She spots the lanyard. Oh, that's colourful, Thomas, she says. Don't think we should keep it around his neck, though. Eh? It's a statement, not a question. It's got safety features, I say. Even so. And she takes it off him and hands it back to me. And now he's smiling and laughing at the same TV presenter who's trying to train a sheepdog. In my first ever meeting at Voice, Stuart raised the idea of us introducing ourselves, how we identify, our preferred pronouns. There was another guy there, Paul, also new, who objected strongly. I just feel like we're asking people to out themselves over and over again, or worse, we're outing them, and God knows we get enough of that outside of here. Oh, said Stuart, alarmed. Oh, well, no one would be made to feel, like they had to say anything they weren't comfortable with, of course. Paul had looked unconvinced. What didn't happen was a discussion. And that's partly my fault, because in that awkward moment of silence, what I wanted to say was, I'm happy to say who I am, because maybe it'll help us realise who we are. Shouldn't we be turning up the volume on who we are rather than turning it down? Maybe by figuring out who is in the room, we'll realise who's not. But I didn't. I kept stum. And so we moved on. It's 1 week until the national event. Dev hands out the flyers asking for volunteers. I look over at Edie. Earlier in the day, I text her a question. I look and nod. She nods back. Okay, at this point in the meeting, I'd like to hand over to Edie. She's interested in hearing our thoughts about the discussion we had last week. Edie? She talks, tells us about how she's feeling, bravely and concisely, about what her choices are. And the room responds. Isn't it just common sense? Oh, it's just a paper exercise these days. But it's self-selecting. I mean, if you want to avoid it, you can avoid it. The people who go are either those who've been directed or those who have an interest already. Sometimes the conversation veers off, but I bring it back. Sometimes it turns into a moment for soapboxing, but I let it. Is he facing disciplinary? Look, what we're saying is that it's not just about an individual, is it? We're talking wide-scale change that's needed. Exactly. And then solutions, ideas, advice start to come. What we need is a champion in each area. We need the idea of equality to be embedded into the trust. I look at Edie. She's writing everything down. She looks up at me and she smiles. Hi Tash, it's Stuart. I wanted to wish you luck with the speech on Thursday. I'll be thinking about you. Just to say, Pauline, you know, the new CEO, has asked me to ask you to make sure that you cover certain things in your speech. She wants it to be your speech, of course, but there are just a few bits she's keen to include. Give me a call back. I've got my speech, my notes. Pauline, the new CEO, is welcoming everyone to the event. The hall looks amazing. Dev and Carla have done an incredible job. Over 300 delegates across the trusts nationally. 5 guest speakers and me as the keynote. And I'm ready to talk about voice. I'm ready to talk about our communication mechanisms and our busy calendar of events. I'm ready to talk about our safe space, our open door, our mailing list, our membership numbers and the lanyards and badges and shoelaces and mugs and how many we've managed to give out this quarter. And I'm ready to talk about the equality and diversity strategy and getting the message out. And I'm ready to talk about inclusion. And I imagine Vanya and Jan and that poor kid. And I realise I'm not ready. I realise I need to say something about us. Something about what we're doing. What are we doing? What are we? Are we? I see Pauline winding up her introduction. And I see Dev coming towards me, his face ashen. I hear something about a phone call. And then, Tash, Claire's on the phone. It's your dad. I wanted to take some time in the room by myself. He'd had a stroke, my dad. I had to take a leave of absence. It was serious, but they acted fast. They got into the hospital. Claire met me there. Dev did the speech. Had loads of emails saying how well he did. I had loads of time to think while sitting with my dad about the network, about my reasons for joining, about being chair. So, item 1. Who are you talking to? Says Alma. She's standing by the door. You stepping down? She asks. Yes. Well, no. Alma, you're early. Is this because of what happened at the event? She says. Well, yes, partly. But it's other reasons. I don't feel like I'm having the impact I hoped I would. What did you want to say in your speech? I saw you tear the other one up. Alma, it doesn't really... She's looking at me now, frowning. I wanted to say that I really want to believe in voice. I want to believe in our network. I want to believe it gives people a place to go. But sometimes I'm frustrated. I wanted to ask, who is it for, really? Is it for the members? Or is it for the trust? Who does it represent? Who's in the room, who's not, and if not, why not? Is our network just the illusion of inclusion? In my original speech, I talked about our collective voice, the community. But I wanted to ask, what does that even mean? Who does that mean? The rainbow merch has to be more than just pretty objects that we want to quantify. It has to be the start of the conversation, not the end. It can't be a way to buy silence on the topics. If up and down the network, up and down the trusts, the majority identity is straight ally, what does that mean? And then, after saying all of that, after asking all those questions, I wanted to listen. You see, Alma, I put myself forward as chair because I thought I could be the solution to some of these questions, but now I realise I can't, so I'm stepping down. Do you know I used to work in sales? Says Alma. Huge company. If anyone else was gay there, I didn't know. I mean, everyone knew I was, of course, but I didn't have any friends. I got overlooked for things. When I came here, I thought it would all change. But it didn't. It stayed the same. And then I joined the network. You know, there are members of my family who still don't know I'm a lesbian. forward to the meetings. My mental state, everything is better. Look, conversations are happening because of these meetings. Look at Edie. They're talking about a day to celebrate diversity. They're talking about LGBT champions in each ward, each unit, each department. Is that progress? I don't know. But talk to Edie about how that made her feel. The space that you created. So, if you're talking about not having an impact, I'm sorry to say it, but that is total shit. But if you want to step down, that's your choice. I'm not going to stop you. I always thought you hated these meetings, I said. Why do you think that? Dunno, just thought they were boring. Yeah, well, they are sometimes. And then sometimes we have these breakthroughs. Usually at the end. Maybe you should always start there. And then suddenly, the door flew open, and Dev flies in, almost falls over a chair coming to hug me. Then Carla and Edie. And Katie. And 4 newbies who'd heard about us at the national event. Okay, welcome everyone. Today, we're going to do things a little differently. Let's start by saying, introducing ourselves, whatever makes us feel comfortable. So, I'm Natasha. I'm gay, I'm married to Claire, and my pronouns are she, her. Dev's staring at the agenda. He looks up at me and mimes, "Don't you dare." I look at Alma. She sighs. And then suddenly, someone's at the door. Someone I haven't seen in months. "Am I too late?" says Vanya. I was thinking about what Alma said. And then for some reason, those swimming lessons with my dad popped into my head. Swim to me. Swim to me. Swim to me. Dad's recovering. Against everything. "He's a tough old fella," said Gwen last time I visited. "And he's talking again. Still that receding of the man he once was. Still the odd horrible word. But Claire visits, and instead of leaving, we talk back to him. There's only one way for my dad. Sad as I am to say it. It breaks my heart, but it's true. But I can't believe that for the world. Last night, just as we were about to leave, Dad muted the TV. And he turned to Gwen and said, "This is my daughter, you know. And that's her wife, Claire. Love them." And I know he'll forget that. But I won't. Okay, thanks everyone, and welcome. Before I get to the agenda, Does anyone have any other business?
What a powerful, inspiring and thought-provoking film, which has just touched on so many pertinent issues. I'm really delighted now to ask the audience to join me and the panel for a live debate about the film. There's some great questions in the chat, which I'll pick up shortly. But before we start, could I please ask the panel to join me and invite them just to give a short introduction about themselves and their role in the film.
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. Nice to be with you all. I'm Einarsdóttir. I'm a lesbian, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm also senior lecturer in management at the University of York and the principal investigator of this project. So basically, I'm the data person behind this project. So that's me.
Thank you. Adam?
Hi there, I'm Adam. I'm a straight cis man. My pronouns are he, him. And I am the writer of Any Other Business. I wrote the script based on Anna and her team's research.
Great, thank you. And Chloe?
Hi, sorry about those technical difficulties. I think my headphones were deciding not to play ball. My name's Chloe. My pronouns are she, her. I identify as lesbian or queer, and I was the director of the piece.
Great, thank you. And just to the audience, just to let you know, Olivia was due to join us, who was the actress in the film, but unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, she hasn't been able to join this morning. Colleagues, let me go to the questions, because there's been really powerful and interesting questions. And the one that I want to start with first, which is one raised by Joe Dykes in the chat, but also been picked up by a number of other participants, which is, how do you think the best way is to kind of educate or even approach the older generation to enlighten them without offending? So start wherever you like.
I think that's a huge question. I think one of the things, just to begin with, that Any Other Business tries to do is kind of ask more questions than it answers. I think it's about provoking discussion and conversation. So it's amazing to see these questions in there. Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is. When we were doing some drafting of the script, I think it's something, Chloe, you might be able to jump in on this. I think it's something, part of a conversation we had about that moment when Tash is speaking to her dad, and I think also Liv was part of that conversation as well, and sort of said that the key thing for her was this thing where he says, you know, just because you've been to university doesn't mean that you have all the answers. And I think that resonated with all of us. I mean, yeah, I think education is really, really important, isn't it? And raising awareness wherever we can about important issues, and conversation, I think, is vitally important. Conversation rather than, I guess, just laying things on the line. I think speaking to people, finding out what their perspectives are, and bringing our own perspectives to the conversation. But that's kind of a weak answer, because I think it's a really difficult and huge question, a brilliant question, if I may say as well.
I think for me, just to jump in, Adam, I think my perspective on it is a bit that it's difficult, because you, as well as we want to educate, we want to include people in the conversation, and we want to make sure people feel comfortable sort of asking those questions, but it often puts a reliance on individuals to be teachers, and an over-reliance on people of the community to teach others, which they may or may not want to do, or they may find difficult. And I think for me personally, the questions that I would raise from Any Other Businesses, this sort of importance, I think, of these being part of this education being part of workplace training, and being part of there being a formalized aspect to it, which takes some of the weight off the individual to have to educate. I don't know what your thoughts are, Anna.
Great, thank you. Let me just pick up on that, because both, Chloe, Adam, you've raised some really pertinent issues about, education and sometimes the complexity and the difficulty in grasping the nettle within that. Anna, you were instrumental in doing the research. Did the research shed any light, on this question?
I wish. I think we ended up with a whole host of other kinds of questions by actually looking into this. And one of the things that we did pick up from the research was actually the absence of conversations about your life outside of work, which was really quite what we wanted to bring out in the film, partly to make Tash a whole person, not just a person that does some work in the workplace, but also she's got a life outside of work that we really want to pick up on. I suppose, kind of tagging on to what Chloe said about our individual responsibility can be quite burdensome to be this educator, to enlighten people about different facets of our identities. But the issue I think is that needs to be addressed is actually, what is the role of the organizations? What role do they play in this? And how can they actually help people, their workers, to have those conversations, and more importantly, for people to ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay not to know. And it's okay to get things wrong. And I think it's the fear of getting things wrong that really stops people from asking in the first place.
Great, thank you. I want to change tack a little bit, because there's some really interesting questions, specifically about the script, the staging, the research. A number of people have said how powerful the insights have been. And for me, that question of voice. So the question I would want to put, to all of you really, because you've all had a role to play in this, is how long did it take you to put together the script, the staging of the film? It's very powerful, having a solo actress play so many different roles, but not so much roles, but so many different voices. Was that always inherent and part of the piece? Or did it evolve as you began to kind of produce the script, with different drafts? So I'd like to kind of hear more about both the direction of the film, the development of the script, and then how that evolved.
I'm going to jump on this purely because I'm going to actually pass it straight over to Adam and Anna, because this has been such a labour of love, this film. It has been actually years in the making. If we're being honest, it's been years, because Anna and Adam first met, how long ago? Was it about 2 years ago?
2014 we first met, I think. Yeah. Yeah,
well, let's open that one up then. So give us some insights, and also, the words that you use, were they, actually taken from, the research that Anna did, or did you then craft those words to kind of mirror what was being said, or are they the actual words that evolved? So some little bit of background, how's the script evolved, and how did you put all of this together?
Well, Anna and I met in 2014 when Anna saw a play that my first touring play, which was called Conscientious, which was about, in part, was about workplace bullying and conflict. And Anna arranged for that play to go to her university, which was Hull at the time. And that's where she was at that particular moment. And I think we just hit it off on that day. And Anna said something along the lines of, if would you ever consider writing something in response to, a big research project? To which my answer was, yeah, of course, definitely. And there were lots of conversations in the interim about budget and practicalities and things like that. And then eventually I got an email from Anna saying that the funding had been sourced for this huge research project. And it went from there, really. And there's obviously lots of stuff going on in the intervening years. But for me, I remember feeling incredibly excited having the first couple of conversations with Anna about the specifics about her research. And the thing that I found, really engaging was Anna's perspectives on this. I mean, I have to say that the whole script is entirely based around Anna's research. The whole thing draws upon that research really, really strongly. I don't think any of it is verbatim. I was looking at that question. I think basically everything is approximated, but an awful lot of it is based on real things that were present in the research. So, almost everything is based on the findings, particularly the individual instances and the topics and the things that were being discussed were almost entirely based on Anna's research. And yeah, in terms of drafting the play, yeah, I think Chloe, we had some conversations about whether or not it would be a monologue, right? Early doors.
Yeah. I think there was, as you were saying about something based on the research, just to clarify, I think we had transcripts of different meetings, and so that gave us a lot of the sort of the initial impetus for different conversation pieces that could happen in the script. And yeah, we discussed, me and Adam, like, is this going to be a three-hander, which is just, having three actors play this, or do we want to have an individual play all the characters? And we thought having an individual play all the characters would be more fun, so that's why we went with that. But yeah, I think we had some very early meetings, didn't we, Adam, about how the structure, and along with Anna's input about really what it was we were trying to say.
Yeah, and how, I think it'd be great to pass on to Anna to talk about this idea of voices as well. This idea of how do you create a piece of work, which was originally meant to be a play. I don't know if many people are aware of this, but Any Other Business was very much supposed to be a play, and because of COVID, we ended up creating a film. But yeah, this idea of how do you try to represent lots of different voices using a single voice, which is one of the beats of the film, right, Chloe? But Anna, yeah, I mean, Anna, what was your experience in terms of this all coming together? What are your memories of it?
Oh well, it's the memory go way back. So I think you captured really well, Adam, about when we first kind of met, when I saw your piece at the Hall Trop Theatre, and they decided to introduce the topic to my students at the time. And I think for me, the point there was that I really liked to use theatre as a medium to really talk about some difficult issues that we often have problems having a conversation with. And especially at the time I was teaching on bullying. So the piece really opened door to open conversations about things that people would typically not ask questions about. So that's how the idea came about, really. On the topic of voice, it's a tricky one, because I think in part we were bound by a budget to some degree. We would have loved to have like a huge casting and everything, but that of course didn't happen. So we were in part restricted by that. But how do you really embody voices? And I think it really worked out quite well, I think, in the end, that there's this single person that embodies all the different voices. But one of the things that we did find in the research, that there was a huge lack of diversity, and in the networks, all kinds of diversity. So we find it quite interesting to play with the idea of having a single person to embody different voices. And maybe sort of kind of problematize that, is that really correct? Can one person speak on behalf of everybody else? So I pose that question to you, the audience, really, to think about.
Anna, just stay there for a second, because I want to build on the responses to this question, because there's another thought-provoking question, which I often grapple with in the context of my own research. Is, you have used some really innovative methods to take your research findings and used art and artistic engagement. And that's not easy. That's difficult. With all of the intricacies that have been sort of developed. And the question is, do you find writing, directing, filming allows you to reach a different audience, to your academic sphere? So has the potential of your research been able to go wider than, just the traditional audiences through this mechanism?
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. It has really gained a huge momentum. At the back of making the film, we also launched a toolkit which is accessible on our website, where people can actually view the film and show it and share it with their colleagues. And we have created some props for people to use. So we really wanted people to run with the idea and for the film to spread its wings, so to speak. So yes, we've had huge responses to the film and a great interest from all aspects of life.
Great, thank you. Again, I want to move, there's some really powerful questions and I want to try and get through as many as I can. The one that I want to take next is, we've been talking about voice, we've been talking about, creating the conditions, and, the power of the film, highlighted that, it's an emotional endeavour. And meetings are often, rational endeavours. So the question I want to put to you as a panelist is, from your experience now, how would you create the conditions for more open, meaningful conversations between people in the context of what their experience, rather than just being guarded, and transactional exchanges between workmates, doing things differently, which, your play, I mean, the comment is, which seems to be the tension in the brilliant play. So how do we unravel that kind of paradox and tension management to create the conditions? Adam, let me start with you first, then I'll come to Chloe, and then, Anna, any final comments that you might have on that question?
Yeah, what an amazing question. I think creating or attempting to create a safe space where people feel like they are able to express themselves fully and openly it surely is the key. How you do that, I think, is obviously a lot more complicated and difficult. And actually, I think that's one of the things that I was really interested in Anna's research. And in particular, the reason the place, or one of the reasons the place called Any Other Business is something that Anna spoke to me about in the course of her research, which was this idea that obviously meetings such as the ones that we fictionalize in our play, you would have an agenda, you'd have things that people needed to deal with. But what I noticed, and through conversations with Anna and reading the transcript, was that when actually this point of Any Other Business came up, that was actually where a lot of the interesting, heartfelt, kind of human stuff seemed to come in. So that's kind of one of the points of the end of the play, kind of the way that Tash opens with Any Other Business. So I don't know, maybe there's something in that. Maybe there is something in allowing a slightly more open forum approach to conversations and things like that. But certainly I think this idea of creating a place where people feel safe to express themselves, and to reiterate something Anna said earlier, this idea of a freedom of being able to make mistakes, ask questions, get things wrong, actually, and feel that people can do that, because therefore I think that maybe the questions that they would ask would be more useful, and they'd feel more comfortable in asking them, perhaps.
Okay, and just building on that then, a couple of the other questions that, are related to that is, what's your ideal meeting agenda, and what are the kind of important questions meetings should be addressing? Let me come to you first, Chloe, on that. What's the ideal meeting agenda, and kind of what sort of questions should meetings be addressing? And then Anna, any further comments that you might have on that?
I think it's really interesting because it's almost actually sort of this might be a wrong use of this word, but it's a statistical problem, in the sense that in my ideal head, I've been thinking about this a bit at the moment, I'm a little bit obsessed with the idea of like citizen assemblies, where you have a group of people come together and it's acknowledged that this is a space where these conversations are going to be had, and therefore people can choose to engage or not. But the difficulty there is that you may have people, you're biasing your sample, in the sense that you have people who are willing to talk about those things and are willing to have those conversations, but also don't necessarily represent all people. So just the opinions of, say, for example, a select few members who are trans doesn't represent the opinions of all trans people, or the way you should approach all trans people. So I think the interesting thing is it's how we facilitate these meetings. It's almost not asking, we're kind of not there yet in terms of what the content of the meetings are, as opposed to the structure of the meetings for me. So like, who should facilitate them, how we create this space, how we hold this space. And then I think in terms of the ideal agenda, it should be, I'm not really sure. I think possibly whatever people who on that day feel like they wish to discuss, because if you start saying we're going to talk about the entirety of the bisexual experience in NHS England, that's a very difficult conversation to have. Not assuming that's what people would bring, but I think it's difficult. This whole thing is really hard, but it's important that we talk about it because it's hard.
No, thank you. I wonder what would happen if we put any other business at the top of the agenda and not at the bottom of the agenda, you know, and just changing the way that we do things. And I love that notion of holding the space. Anna, let me come to you with a slightly different take on this question, because it's not simply about what we ask and how we ask it. What's the reaction been, you know, to this piece of research and to this film, you know, more widely?
So when we, so I should have said that we worked with 9 different networks in the NHS and spent a great deal of time with each and every one of them. So at the back of that work with the networks, we all had feedback meetings with the networks because we really wanted to understand, you know, wanted to see what did they make of our thoughts about what might be happening in these networks. And it was really interesting. Those meetings were quite informative because I think it kind of, there were two directions it could go. In some instances, it was almost as if they picked up very different issues that we had picked up, but there was a lot of nodding. There was a lot of nodding when we were presenting and discussing the findings. So there was never any kind of, oh, this we haven't seen this, and there was none of that. But what we saw maybe more of was when we were trying to open up questions, there wasn't always there wasn't a great deal of reflection that followed necessarily. But I think many of the networks were really struggling in their operation, and tying into the issue about the agenda, for example, they were really stuck between a rock and a hard place, because on one hand, they were trying to serve their members, but they were also trying to serve their organizations. So they were kind of stuck in between. And the agenda was perhaps a symptom of that, because they felt they had to go through the motions with all these agenda items on the expense of their own members. I think it would be a really good start if we could simply start with any other business and see what happens. What happens then? What kind of conversation can happen when you do that, when you completely turn it on its head? And there was one network that didn't actually have meetings, which is an interesting point in itself. But many were really driven by meetings and heavy agendas, which weren't always beneficial to the networks or their members.
Great, thank you. I want to pick up again now on 2 slightly different strands, but, you know, interrelated. You know, one is there was a heavy focus on the NHS and lots of, you know, references, you know, and inserts in the context of the NHS. Why was that?
So this is such a very interesting question. The reason of the research did come from NHS networks. That was the origin of that as a setting. But the second point is that there had been an interesting thing that had been happening while obviously this film's taken some time to make, and over this time there had been certain events that happened in the world that had really impacted us and influenced the script itself, including the COVID-19 pandemic. So when we started writing it, one of the transcripts from a network meeting that me and Adam got very excited about was a conversation about the rainbow lanyards that NHS staff wear and who should be wearing them, and why people were wearing them, and the fact that people were stealing them from different departments. And we found this particularly fascinating because of what it kind of represents in terms of a commodification of the pride flag and the use of the pride flag in circumstances that were maybe inappropriate, considering the fact it is a flag of protest and a flag that holds a lot of heritage and a lot of meaning. And while this was all happening, obviously COVID-19 started, and the rainbow symbol. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that the rainbow symbol is something that is held entirely by the queer community, but the rainbow as a symbol was used during COVID-19 for the NHS as a form of support. And I just found it quite fascinating in terms of the meaning of symbols, that it actually also came out of the use of the rainbow symbol for the pride flag came out of a shared struggle in the queer community during another pandemic that was actually entirely ignored by the world community for some time. So the use of the rainbow flag creeping in there was not necessarily for us to fall on either side and say you shouldn't use the rainbow flag in any way, but more just an interesting point of, what does it mean when we use these symbols? What does it mean when they are used in different circumstances, and does that change the meaning? Does that impact it in any way?
Great, thank you. Again, just building on that, there's a question around, almost like kind of where next. Are there other topics, topics, environments that you'd like to explore? So really the question is, where do you go next with such a powerful piece? Will you use it in the context of schools, or in other places, to develop as an education and as the learning tool? Or if you've got, plans? So really, it's that big question, where next? This can't surely be the end. This has got to be the start of something. So colleagues, just in a sentence or so, because I've got one final questions that I want to kind of ask you before we draw matters to a close. So what are you going to do with all of this great work?
I'll very quickly jump in and go with what my hopeful plans, along with the help of my colleagues, of where I would like to develop this, is that I'd love for it to be recreated onto a stage piece. So we actually bring it to a stage, which is where it was originally meant to be. And two, that we explore working with the communities that aren't represented in these groups, that we often find were not represented. So the trans community, people of colour, people who didn't necessarily feel able to join these workplace networks, and ask them what it is that made them feel that way.
Great, thank you. And there's a final question before I come to the one question that I'd like to ask, which is, what about the role of more spiritual qualities, in meetings, like kindness and empathy, as opposed to just focusing process, and equality in meeting, i.e. everyone gets to say, because that's become a norm, hasn't it? We sit around in a group and somehow suddenly the circle creates this equality and we all get a chance to speak. So any thoughts based on the research that you've undertaken about the kinds of other underlying qualities that were beginning to kind of surface? Anna, any thoughts and reflections on that?
Yeah, I think we need to be more curious about each other. I think we should actually ask questions about each other, get to know each other, because our research showed that people didn't actually know who was in the room. So you might have a room full of people at a meeting and people didn't necessarily know each other. And more importantly, didn't know each other's identity. And these are networks that are meant to be talking about identity. So it's really important to get to know each other, because otherwise you're not going to be able to identify who is overrepresented in the room and who is underrepresented, is equally as problematic issues. So before knowing that, you have got no chance of addressing inequalities, and equality does not happen without being worked at.
Great, thank you. And my final question, to all of you before I bring proceedings to a close. Adam, I'm going to start with you. What's the one question that we should have asked you and we didn't, and what would your answer have been?
Well, actually, the question that I anticipating this question, I wrote one down, and it was more or less asked. So I'm going to flip it round, and I would like to pose a question to the audience, which is what their perspective is, what their thoughts are, what their feelings are towards this image of the rainbow flag, and has that changed or altered or kind of changed in any way, I guess, since COVID, since we've seen lots of rainbow emblems surrounding the NHS. So I'm going to do a really cheeky thing and flip that on its head and pose that to the audience. Is that allowed?
Absolutely. So to the audience, if you've got a response, please do put your answers into the question and answer box. Anna, same question to you.
Yeah, I think I would have, I suppose the key question for me is, what is the purpose of networks? And I think we often move away from actually investigating. So what is it, why they're there? What are they trying to do? And I think that is the really key questions that all networks and meetings, any kind of meetings, we need to ask yourself, why are we doing this? And do we need it?
Great, thank you. Chloe?
I think, yeah, for me, it would be, if these networks aren't representative, who are they really for? Which is sort of building on Anna's question.
Great, thank you. And we have had one response, Adam, to your question in the question and answer. The rainbow flag has a broad feeling of kindness and gratitude and acceptance for me, which spans pride and the NHS and probably other things too. Now that's a really powerful note for me to maybe just begin to kind of end proceedings on. Colleagues, let me just take the opportunity first of all to thank our panel. Anna, Adam, Chloe, you have been authentic and engaging in not just what you have produced, but your openness to the kinds of questions, and I can't thank you enough. It's been really insightful, it's been moving, and it's been really powerful. And to the audience, thank you for so engaging again, so thoughtfully and so reflectively, because, pieces of work like this, the Festival of Ideas, is about taking some of these ideas, working with them, and looking to see what people's responses are to them. And it's one of the most powerful pieces of film, that I have seen recently, and has really made me think thoughtfully and sharply about the role of networks, but also about voice, and spaces for voice and what we're trying to achieve within those contexts. And although Olivia isn't here, I'd like to, just acknowledge the powerful performance by Olivia, which is no easy thing to do, is to play many different roles and to have many different voices. So a huge thank you. And just to the audience, I just want to let you know that the recording of this event will be available on the festival YouTube channel, which can be accessed from the Watch Again section of the festival website after the 20th of June. And you'll all get contacted by email when the video is available. And I'm not ashamed to say, I did see a preview of the video just before I chaired it, and I shared with the panel members. I've watched it 3 times now, and today watching it again for the 4th time. And every time I watch it, it provokes something different and new in me, and I see new insights into it. So I'd encourage colleagues both to share it, and to watch it again. And then finally, we hope that you will continue to engage with the York Festival Ideas. You can check out on our website, yorkfestivalofideas.com, for a detailed programme of all the kind of forthcoming events in relation to this. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on how these events and continue the conversation. And you can do that by using the hashtag York Ideas. And so, colleagues, a huge thank you to everybody for tuning in, and for, to our panelists and to Olivia the actress on what I think you'll all agree has been a hugely powerful performance. So if there aren't any other final questions, which I cannot see, I would like to say a huge thank you, and have a good day wherever you are. Thank you.